good, fam? Welcome back to another episode of Shalomies, two homies musing on the theology of Shalom. I am one of your hosts, Yana Janae Connor, and then we got the Elizabeth Woodson with us. Liz, say hi to the people.
Greetings and felicitations.
What? Greetings and what, Fred?
Felicitations.
What is that?
It's from the Wiz. It's
yeah.
It's what the lion says. Yeah. So that's where I get it from.
Nice. That was really nice. I should have known that, but I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. That's great. That's one of my favorite movies.
Lead with curiosity. That's what you always tell me.
That's fine. That's fine. That's how you want to start the episode, Liz? That's how we'll start the episode. And here it was. I was all about to hype you up because you just won a bestseller award for your book, Habits of Resistance. What is it? The EPCC award? Is that what it's called?
Evangelical Christian
Publishing Association.
Yes.
ECPA. There it is.
Yes. Yeah. There we go.
Fran, congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah.
How does that feel?
It feels good. That's what I'm gonna say. Books are hard to write for lots of different reasons and to share with people. And so there have been enough people who have purchased a copy, either the hard copy or the audio, or however they get their numbers, that allow me to make that list. And so I'm just really grateful for that, because it's the readers. It's, they're the ones who are investing in the project. So shout out to everyone who's participated in that endeavor.
Yeah, no, I'm so excited for you, friend. And it's an excellent book. So it is worth purchasing. So you haven't already gotten Habits of Resistance. Go ahead and pick that thing up. Let it change your life. Let the Lord bless you real good. Liz, before we jump into our conversation today, I wanted to follow up on our last conversation with Lisa, where we talked about how do we hold on to faith when our heroes fall. Because one of the things that I wanted to say that I forgot to say was that there are people who make it. There are people who endure to the end. And I would just love to hear from you. Who are some of those people in your life that you've seen their faith endure?
Yeah, one person I like to point to is I worked with her on staff at a church here in Dallas. And she just always challenged me about what it was to be faithful through seasons that are challenging in ministry. And the way she would pray, the way she would be faithful to the people that she's supposed to serve, the way that she would traverse just situations that maybe would have a different response from me. That she challenged me in growing more into being faithful to the call until the Lord tells you otherwise. And so it's just been really cool to see. I mean, she's coming up on, 13 years in ministry, and just all of the people that she's been able to impact, just being herself also. She's not trying to fit anybody else's shoes for who she should be as a leader. She's leading in the fullness of who she is as a person. And that was also really encouraging. So her name is Terry. And so shout out to Terry. She is that girl, even though she's a grown woman. Grown.
Yeah. No, that's so good. I recently had an opportunity to go to Orlando, and I did 2 years of ministry. My first 2 years of ministry was in Orlando. And so I was like, yo, let me try to see if my old boss is still there and if she would be open to connecting. And she was more than open to connecting. She let me stay at her house. Her name's Lorna. She's my first boss. She contributed a lot to my discipleship and my spiritually, emotionally healthiness. She called me out a lot of times, and I'm so grateful for her. But one of the things that was really beautiful was to go back to her home, where her and her husband are, and to see how their faith is enduring. And so she was like, oh, we're going to be out tonight because we're going to Bible study. We got Bible study tonight. And her sharing with me books that she's been reading and how she's continuing to try to grow in Christ-likeness. And I don't know Lorna's age specifically because she has withheld that information from me. But And Lorna, if you listening, I love you, girl. Okay. But I think she's like in her late 60s, maybe, pushing 70. I don't really know. I can't say definitively. So, but I just was really moved by that. And I was reminded that there are a lot of people who are still walking with Jesus, who've been walking with Jesus for 30, 40 plus years, and who haven't had like this significant like moral failure in ministry, and that's all the Lord's grace. But I think we don't often hear those stories or maybe
Yeah.
even recognize those stories because those aren't the people who are online, or
Right.
those aren't always the things that go viral. Like even if, someone passes away and let's say, Christianity Today like covers it,
Yeah.
and talks about how they endured to the end. I bet you less people are going to read that article than they are gonna read the article about the person who failed, myself included, because 'cause I'm messy too, So it's like, "Nah, I want the tea," you know? And so but just realizing, like, we need to hear those stories as well and celebrate those stories as well to remind ourselves, like, this thing is possible, it is possible, to endure. So, yeah, I just wanted to say that just because there's another side to that coin, and that side is probably the majority of stories,
For sure.
but they often aren't the ones that we hear the most. Well, today it's not going to be a pretty segue, but today we are actually going to we're going to actually be talking about shame, man. We're going to actually be
Mm,
talking about shame, which is probably something that leads to these moral failures
yeah.
that we see. But we're going to be talking about shame and all the ways we try to either cover it or overcompensate for it. And so I've always learned that before you jump into a conversation about anything, it's really good to establish some shared definitions, if you will. And so, Liz, when you hear the word shame, like what comes to mind? What word pictures maybe come to mind, or like even how would you define it?
Yeah, when I think about shame, I think about this feeling that rises up in us when we have done something that we know is either wrong or doesn't meet the approval of the people that we are in the room with. And so for many of us, the feeling is quickly followed by a plan for how to deal with said emotion. So it could be we lash out in words or we backtrack on what we said. We said something and it's like, oh, the room is telling me this is entirely inappropriate. So I need to backtrack. What I really meant was, or or is something more significant. It can be this internal spiral that produces really destructive behaviors. But it is that initial something has happened in our lives that we know is either wrong and we wish we hadn't done, or doesn't meet the approval of the people around us. And so, yeah, this painful self conscious emotion of sorts that we can have. And
Mhm.
again, quickly followed by how we try to relieve
Hmm.
that particular feeling of shame.
Yeah, yeah. I went to the internet because I'm a nerd in that way. Was like, yeah, what they saying on the internet? How are the professionals, the experts, if you will, defining shalom? And what was interesting is that it kind of seems like one, it's one part your self-understanding, and then the second part is, sort of how you feel like your community understands you. And so, Brené Brown, who is an expert, she says, guilt focuses on behavior, like I did something bad,
Mhm.
and motivates repair. And then she says shame focuses on identity, meaning I am bad, and can be highly destructive, often leading to self isolation and feelings of worthlessness. I thought it was really interesting that she said it can be highly destructive. Because I don't know if I think we think about anger as destructive. I don't think we think about shame as destructive, but I do think that shame impacts our relationship with God, along with like how we relate to other people, and even how we relate to ourselves. And so, Dr. Henry Cloud, another expert, he has this book called Changes That Heal, and he talks about there's our true self, and then there's our false self or our ideal self. And what we tend to do is project our ideal self onto the world, the way that we want to be seen and perceived, while we hide like our true self because we don't know whether or not that person will be accepted. And then there's Ed Welsh, who is a Christian therapist. He's done a lot of work around shame. He has a book called Shame Interrupted. But he says shame has to do with your standing before God and also your standing in community. Yeah. And so when I put all those things together, I sort of think about shame as kind of like this discontentment or dissatisfaction with self, plus this fear of others, and how people will perceive you, and then how it can kind of lead us to these destructive practices of masking and overcompensating for our shame.
Let me ask you this question, because I think our understanding of shame in the West is and can be different than it is in the East. So you have the honor shame paradigm, a framework that it's present in our scriptures, present in more collectivist cultures. And so I do think that there there are some people who say we need to bring shame back.
I
Some
don't know.
stuff people are like, you shouldn't do that. That's not good for us as a community. And so, how would you kind of parse those two out? The ways in which shame is like, yeah, this is actually a pretty destructive, place to sit in and allow to stir in who you are. And what are the ways in which, when we think of ourselves, I think, particularly as a group, that it can be helpful to bring us back into an appropriate place of standing that honors, I would say, the gospel way we're supposed to show it with people, but you could even extend it to like the social contract that we have. But it's like, where do we make space for the honor shame paradigm that we see in Western culture? That's a big question. I'm popping it on you last minute, but I don't know if you have thoughts about
I
that.
was like, sis, you might have to reword the question. I don't know. Like, because I'm gonna, resist even in this moment, like trying to perform like I fully understood the question and that I haven't answered, to it. I know the first thing that came to mind was that in our culture, shame is more individualistic than it is communal. And it's probably less about having right standing with other people and more about having right standing in the community, right? Like being in a place of honor in the community. Whereas I think more in Eastern cultures, it's more about, not bringing shame upon your family, and or not shaming whatever group or community that you're a part of. But I think for us, shame is very individualistic. It's about us, and how we are being perceived, and us wanting a place of honor in our community. It's that part of us who wants to be the smartest person in the room.
Mhm.
It's that part of me that wants to be a ECPA bestseller, or New York Times bestseller. It's that part of me that wants to be significant, that wants to be known, that wants to be revered. That and when I'm not those things, or when I don't achieve those things, then I feel this sense of shame and embarrassment. And ain't nobody even thinking about me. Like, ain't nobody thinking about me in that way. But I can carry the shame and embarrassment around because I haven't become or achieved what I wanted to achieve. Because all of those accolades and all of those medals and whatnot, they kind of act like fig leaves, that cover up my shame. Yeah, yeah. You got any thoughts on your own question, friend?
Love that. Love that. I think it is probably the answer of the question is, I think in conversations around shame, we don't always acknowledge that our understanding of it does have a particular framework. And that even as you read scripture, the honor shame dynamic is present in how Israel would have understood what it meant for them to be a people. And even I think that some of the things you see in the New Testament. And so that's probably like an asterisk to our conversation. And, we always have resources. And so I'll drop a book amongst the other books we will inevitably talk about in the
Yeah.
resources list. But I do think it's important to acknowledge that shame to me is not inherently bad. It depends the construct in which you're talking about it. And
Oh,
for
yeah, that's
us
good.
in individualistic culture, I do think it can have some really destructive ways. And also in a collectivist culture, there can be some destructive things. But I think that asterisk is important.
Okay, time out because we gotta talk about that. You said shame isn't always bad. If somebody said Liz is a heretic, like somebody just said it.
Mhm.
Somebody said that ain't true. Shame is of the devil, right? And so, but shame is an emotion. It is a God given emotion, and so I think we need to maybe define what healthy shame is and what it can look like, versus unhealthy shame. So, yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, probably my thoughts when I think about healthy shame, again, it is not individualistic, right? That I exist within this larger construct in which there is this agreement for how I'm going to show up in a way that cultivates the flourishing of everybody else in the group. And so when I do something that then pushes up against that, that feeling is not meant to make me a bad person. It's not meant to say you don't belong here, but it is inviting the question of is how I'm showing up cultivating the flourishing of the larger group, or am I jeopardizing that because of my behavior? And I think that
Mhm.
that in your more Eastern context is how that functions so that what is maintained is that the whole thrives, not to the detriment of the individual. But there are things we do that we shouldn't do. And we need to realize that and come back into alignment. And so, but that can get muddied for us when that's not how we function in the West, in America. Like we rarely interact with shame like that. And so if someone's like, Elizabeth, I don't know what you're talking about, it's like in our Western American individualistic culture, shame can be really, really destructive. If you were to transport yourself out of this culture into another one, you might have something different to say. Again, looking at the benefit of the whole and how we're honoring our place as one of the group
Yeah.
and how we're showing up.
Yeah, it actually makes me think about, like, what righteousness means biblically. And I think I grew up thinking righteousness was primarily about, uh, personal holiness. But that's not what righteousness means biblically. It actually is speaking to being in a right standing with God and with others. And so it's more about your relational holiness, than it is your personal holiness. And I think that's the shift, that we also, like kind of need to make with like our conversation about shame. A lot of our shame is just about our personal righteousness, like than it is about our relational righteousness. And so we can think, that we walking good with Jesus, because we having our quiet time, we fasting, we praying, we serving in church on Sunday. We don't just give 10%, we give 15. You know what I'm saying? We a generous giver, And so,
Cheerful,
you know,
overflow, press down,
cheerful.
shake it together.
Right. And so because of that, we can have this very haughty view of ourselves and view ourselves as righteous. But like in the biblical context, like Jesus would call you a Pharisee. Okay, that's cool. I really appreciate that. But that's very Pharisee like behavior. Whereas Jesus is more concerned about our relational righteousness. And so no, that's really good, friend. I'm so glad that you brought that out because like there isn't just healthy and unhealthy shame. There's also like warranted and unwarranted, shame, which
Yeah.
is kind of the same thing. But,
Hmm.
there's some things that we feel shame about that we don't really need to feel shame about. And then there is, um, shame that is a result of something that you did, or shame that's a result of something that happened to you. But then there's also this sort of overt shame, where it looks in all the, stereotypical ways. And then there's subtle shame. And I think for many of us, shame is a little bit more subtle than it is overt. And so for the rest of our time, I just want us to like maybe identify and respond to sort of the subtle ways shame can present in our lives. Because here's what I'm coming to believe, and this is real fresh for me. It's that uh all of us probably wrestle with some level of shame in our lives. It just may not be overt, but that shame is there, and there is a myriad of ways in which we try to either cover it or overcompensate for that. And so I don't know. Would you agree with that statement or disagree? Yes, it's totally fine. This is a safe space.
A safe space. You're not gonna kick me out of the recording.
Well, I don't even have the ability to do that.
You don't.
Because you're the
Which
host.
may or may not have been intentional. But yeah, I do. And again, to me, it's so subtle. That's what we can't see often is that, but we see the responses that we have. And so I think about in our friendships and relationships where you have someone who just points out a area of growth, and our response is to say something sharp or punchy. And what's underneath that is shame, because that person has told us we're not meeting the expectation. So I'll just say from my own life, right? Perfectionism is something that persistent. It's persistent. Just travel buddy through the years. And I remember as a kid, like there are kind of these moments that stick out. And I was at camp and I did something really embarrassing. And I remember like I could sense the social disapproval of kids, which is not the best, and immediately trying to fix it and trying to act like it was okay. But that like feeling of not measuring up and being in a space by myself and everybody kind of on the other side, and it was just like something dumb. Like I might have dropped something or it wasn't anything serious, but I remember like that painful emotion. But what was more prevalent was how I responded. And so I think all that to being said is that we will respond very quickly sometimes. And that to me is an indicator, how we respond is an indicator of the hidden shame underneath.
Yeah, and it's innate. It's a very innate thing for us to cover ourselves when we've been exposed. Whether it's because somebody has confronted us about an opportunity, share with us an opportunity for us to grow, or we have failed in some way that exposes our weakness, exposes our humanity. And so maybe we try to cover it up by lying, or minimizing, what happened, because not only do we not want other people to see us in this way, but we also don't want to see ourselves in this way. And I've been really like wrestling with the fact that like I think this is so innate in us because of what we see in Genesis 2 and 3. There it is, Adam and Eve standing in the garden, naked and unashamed. Man, every time I read those verses, I just want to weep. I just want to weep because it's such a beautiful picture, but it's also heartbreaking. It's beautiful because it's like, man, that is describing what my heart longs for, is to live naked and unashamed. But then it's heartbreaking because of like the reality of the fall. Like, no, we are all naked and ashamed, all naked and ashamed. And it's interesting that shame was like the first human emotion to enter into the world. There it is, Adam and Eve, they sin against God, their eyes are open, and the first thing they do is that they cover themselves with fig leaves. And so I've been really interested in this, like, how do we do that, as humans, in all the overt and in subtle ways, and so what are some ways you think we cover ourselves, with fig leaves?
Yeah, I think you mentioned a few. We minimize, we lie, we mask. So, we try to become the thing when that's not really who we are. We are expert or professional play actors of sorts. And what's hard about some of this is it's family of origin stuff,
Hmm.
right? So it's not just one bad thing. It's you're growing up in this environment and we are socialized to do this because this is how we try to survive what seems really overwhelming. And so I do think that there's some compassion in there. But yeah, it is that's how I would say. What would you say, Yana?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's all those things too. I think it's isolation. So, for some people, it's like I'm gonna be around people and I'm gonna mask, and then for other people, it's like, I'm opting out. I'm just opting all the way out. I'm gonna be over here in my own little corner, in my own little chair, minding my own little business, drinking water. Like that's just like you take isolation because that is easier. I think also it can be like this withholding of truth. And so, we've all been in Bible study and somebody said, is there any sin that you need to confess? Or even like asking like, how can we be praying for you? And it's like, okay, the thing that I really need prayer for, you remember when people was like, what was it? No, no, no. I have an unspoken.
Speak it. Speak the prayer request.
Yo,
No,
the
don't.
first time I remember the first time I heard that, I was like, and I was like leading the group. And sis said, I have an unspoken. And I was like, what does that mean? Like, what do you mean you have an unspoken? But it's because it's like we don't share those things because we don't know how people are gonna view us. We don't know if their opinion of us is going to change. And we talk about this a lot. Like I was like, we can even talk about this a lot through the lens of like discipleship. You know, and so if you're the one who's supposed to be, leading, you can feel like you can't be imperfect, you know, in those situations. And I've been the girl. I've been the girl who's messed up or who confessed, sin, and you can see it. Like their whole opinion of you like sort of shifts and change. It's like, oh dang, like I didn't know I had to be perfect here. I'm a
I'm
human
sorry,
being.
y'all. I'm
You be in here
sorry.
confessing every week.
So you say
Every
I
week.
can't be real. But it maybe another like small asterisk. It's because we have also grown up in spaces that are not safe. And learning to navigate shame isn't always it's being able to trust what is true even when the space cannot be what you need it to be,
Mhm.
right? And I know we're going to get to that, what we see in the scriptures, but I mean, people should share those unspoken prayer requests because they know if they shared in a group, it's not going to be held well. And so the ways in which shame is also there's a survival that goes with it.
And it's so sad because like the scriptures literally say, confess your sins one to another and you will be healed. Like that your healing, the healing that you're longing for is attached to your ability to confess, to come into the light, to uh uncover yourself, to pull away at the fig leaves. Like that is where healing takes place. And I think I just want to insert here, like just how the evil one would love us to stay in hiding. Like he would love us to stay in the dark, because in the dark, like we'll stay entangled in that shame. But what is it? Hebrews says, lay aside every weight and the sin that so easily entangles us. One version says that what hinders you. And for many of us, what's hindering us in our walk with the Lord, in our ability to serve the Lord fully, in whatever way, like whether it's through parenting, whether it's through leading a small group, whatever, like in all of that, for many of us, we can't run the race well because we're carrying the shame. Like we're just carrying like all of the shame within us. And I talked about in a previous episode how, like, in this season of just like disorientation and suffering, if you will, there has come like this self-examination, you know, and me realizing how much I live with sort of this white noise of shame. It's not overt, but it's really subtle, but that it comes up in all of these different ways. And the Lord really, the Spirit confronted me, like just as I've been reading Matthew 11:28 through 30. And so I'm going to read these verses for us, and then we'll walk through some of it together. So Matthew 11:28 through 30, it says, "Come to me, all of you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn of me, because I am lowly and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." And my prayer has just been like, Lord, help me to understand the meaning of these words, because I want the rest. I want the rest that you offer. So help me, unyoke me, Lord, and then yoke me back to you. But it's made me really ask the question, like, what is a yoke? Like, what is a yoke? And so you got all those books behind you, Liz. Like, what's a yoke?
I'm a pause.
I know you well studied. You go pause.
And I'm going to let you answer this question.
No, friend, please.
Because you wrote out a really nice definition for it.
So what is a yoke? In this historical social context that Jesus is speaking to, he's talking about additional laws imposed on the Jews by religious leaders as a means for achieving right standing with God. However, as we talked about before, you know, these laws were less about achieving and maintaining a righteous status with God, and more about achieving and maintaining a particular status before the eyes of other people. And so there was the 10 Commandments, there were the laws, there were in Leviticus, Exodus, and then there were these extra things that the religious leaders, the Pharisees and the Sadducees and all of them, like added to these commands, and saying these are things, requirements that you must fulfill in order to have right standing with the Lord. And Jesus is like, hey, no, those are ill-fitting yokes. Those are not the yokes that's not the yoke that I've put on you. This is the yoke that society and religious leaders has put on you. And to be honest, like that's their historical social context, but it's also ours. It's our historical social context as well. Religious leaders and society, culture around us are all putting these expectations on us of how we are to behave, and how we are to sort of gain right standing in our community, or prove that we have value or worth. And so, Liz, what do you think this kind of looks like amongst like Christians today, and just even in our culture? What are the extras that we're sort of putting on people and saying that they need to fulfill these requirements in order to prove that they have value, significance, or worth?
For the culture, I would say it's the categories of you have some level of functional value. So it's beauty. You got to meet these beauty standards. You got to have whatever eye creams and Botox, and plastic surgery is a whole nother conversation for a whole nother day. But we push towards, you have to look a certain way. And if you don't, then you're not as valuable. It could be output. So I was having a conversation yesterday with another writer, and she just felt the pressure to just push out content just for the sake of pushing out content so she can show people that she's doing something, instead of just like studying and waiting until the right moment to write this really big piece that she wants to write. But it's the hustle. It's like, what are you producing? If you're not showing it, if if you don't take the picture, did it really happen? So that is that kind of thing that we see of dysfunction. And you can kind of go up that list of, it could be money, it could be, size of your house, it could be all those things. But it really is function for the culture. I think it is in some camps for Christians, it's that all the doctrines, right? That you can read somebody their rights of explaining these theological beliefs, and you got to get them right. You got to dot every T and cross dot every I, cross every T. You have to know your Bible really well. And so I see this in communities of people who are newer to the faith, who they didn't grow up in the church. And they will tell me, I kind of feel like an outsider because I walked in front of the stage in the middle of service to get from one side to the other because it's the fastest route. But somebody sent me a text and was like, you can't do that. And it's like, I don't know that. I'm not trying to be, but it's that we have all these unwritten church rules. And if you don't live up to them, you're less. You don't know the songs or the Bible verses. When it's the regular, like you're not reading your Bible as much as you should. You're not showing up to church every Sunday. You're not giving as much as you could be or at all, or you are not serving in the church. You're not checking the boxes. And we give no regard to the season of life you're in or where you're at with the Lord, but we're really good at telling you in the church of where you stand and where you don't. We're just very proficient at that.
Oof, that hurts. That really hurts my feelings, One, because I have participated in those kinds of things, it is how I have measured myself, and then measured other people. And it's like, here it is, I'm using, knowledge, and the Bible and ministry effectiveness to sort of cover and overcompensate, for my shame. And in the process of doing that, I am producing shame in other people. Oh my. that just really hurts my heart. But it also just speaks to what's at stake if we don't get a handle on this. And I don't want to say handle, maybe it's a handle on it, because I'm starting to really think that we all carry a measure of unhealth with us. And as much as the Lord changes us and heals us and makes us new, we're going to be doing this work. We're going to be managing our unhealth between here and eternity. That's just going to be, that's our lot. That's our work. And it's if we fail to sort of manage and apply the gospel to the shame in our lives, not only does it wreak havoc on us, but it also wreaks havoc on other people, right? If we're not living the gospel, then how are we supposed to help other people live the gospel? We can talk about it all day. You can say, "Oh, it's God." This is about to be so messy. I remember. Sorry, this is who I am. Okay, this is who I am.
I'm not trying to shame you.
I'm pulling back the fig leaves today. But I remember going to a church and he kept saying, "Oh, this is gospel-centered preaching. This is gospel-centered preaching. We all about gospel-centered preaching here." And I remember being like, "Brother, just because you say it don't mean it's true." Just because you say it doesn't mean it's true. And I think some of us are like, "Oh no, we're gospel-centered. Oh, we believe the gospel." But it's what does that actually look like in your life? How has Jesus's crucifixion been applied to your identity and your self-understanding? How? How? Where does that show up in your life? And I told you this before, but I have accepted I have ADHD. Now I have not been clinically diagnosed, but I have locked myself outside of the house. I have locked myself outside of my car. It's pretty. I can never find my keys. It's true. Okay. Because of this, I sometimes have a hard time listening. So sometimes my roommate is talking to me and I am not listening. And then she says to me, "Yana, are you listening to me?" And I say, yeah. You had just said, blah, 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 blah. And you know what I'm learning is that me lying in those moments, me covering shame in those moments, reveal what I believe about the gospel. Because if I believe Jesus Christ died on the cross for all of my sins, then I can just say, you know what, sis, I was not listening to you. I am sorry. I don't have to try to what were the 3 words she said and how can I string that together to put together a cohesive? I don't have to do all that work. I can just own it. You're right. I wasn't listening to you. So that's what I'm saying when I'm asking the question, like, how has the crucifixion of Christ and his resurrection, like in the promise that he's coming again, like how have those things like shaped your life? Any thoughts, friend? Whew.
It's a wonderful question, Yana. It's a wonderful question. I think about the ways in which perfectionism means this everything has to be lined up perfectly and you're the one responsible for making sure everything stays where it needs to be. And the perfectionism provides you with a sense of security and control. We all know that's an illusion, but that's just still, and I'm valuable because I hit the mark, right? That's why I'm valuable. And so I think in the moments in which, writing again, I love that I made, I love the things that have happened with the book, but there are also other things that haven't happened. And so other doors that were not open, other marks that I did not get that I was planning on and were really significant for me. And having to say, you will be okay. It doesn't mean you're a bad person. It doesn't mean that you are unwanted. It doesn't mean that it doesn't mean something negative about you as a person in your inner being, in your identity. And that God can still do good things in your life despite the fact that you have not hit these marks. And having to repeat that to yourself, because whether it is sadness or disappointment or just not even wanting to celebrate because you're like, well, this thing didn't happen. So what am I celebrating? And it's like, why are you minimizing the things that have happened because it didn't meet your perfect expectation and standard? And to me, when I think about your question, I think about how we're able to identify what has broken, not met the standard, missed the mark for us, and then what truth about who God is and how he works in our life, we can say, in spite of this characteristic or attribute of God is still true, and so therefore I will be okay.
Yeah.
I can be honest to my roommate, even though that honest moment may not produce warm and fuzzies from your roommate. She's like, oh, thank you for telling me the truth. Like, I don't know how your roommate followed up, but I don't know if she said that. But even in that moment, I can be honest because God will keep me, because his power will help me be honest. His wisdom will help me make the right decision after that. That his wisdom, that you and your roommate are believers that can repair and restore a relationship. Whatever I believe to be wrong, the Lord can make right.
Yeah.
But it's that connection I think is really helpful for us to make, because, and you tell me, because you in this yoke stuff with this Matthew passage, is that what happens when we take off the yoke and we put on his, and we realize the way is easier because we get to live out what is true about the gospel, which is you get the benefits of being in relationship with God.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And so, kind of as I've been thinking about like shame, I've been thinking about fig leaves and yolks. And I think fig leaves are maybe all the ways in which we try to cover our shame. So that's lying, that's masking, that's all the ways we talked about before. And then yolks are all the ways we try to overcompensate or offset, the shame that we feel. And like you said, one of the main ways we do that is with perfectionism. And so it's this inability to be wrong, this inability to accept, being wrong, and always having to be right in our eyes and in the eyes of others. And then another yoke is success and significance. And so it's like, we point to these sort of medals and all these things that we can achieve, sort of as this way to say, like, see, I'm important, I matter, right? And then another yoke can be performance and productivity, which you talked about, sort of this like we are what we do, and so this functionality to it. And then I think another one is comparison and gossip, and so this way we say like, oh, at least I'm not like the person next to us. But all of this like requires a great deal of effort, and perfectionism causes you to become wearisome and burdensome. If you're always in this hustle culture, you're tired all the time, you're weary, you're burdened. Performance, productivity, all of those kinds of things. And I think I've been asking the question, like, what is Jesus's yoke? And like his yoke is the gospel. It's him crucified and raised on the third day and ascended into the heavenlies and sitting at the right hand of the Father. Y'all, that's the whole gospel. I mean, I would say the gospel starts in Genesis 1. But I think a lot of times when we talk about the gospel, we're only talking about what he did on the cross. But it's like, it's the cross, it's his resurrection, it's his ascension, and it's his place in heaven. And all of those things communicate something to us about how we are to live and how we are to be in this world. Like his death, his resurrection, his ascension, his place in heaven, all of that serves as an invitation for us to rest. Like we don't have to achieve. We don't have to prove ourselves. Like Romans 3-5, it says we are justified in Christ. That what Jesus has done is enough. And so if I'm justified in Christ and I don't have to justify myself like with other people, particularly the people who come to me to give me feedback, I don't need to justify myself by being defensive. Like I don't have to do those things. Like I can own that there are things that I don't know. I can own that there are ways that I can be better, because of what Jesus has done for me. And so the gospel liberates us from shame. Like it really, really does. But I do know that it's something that we grow into, but my prayer is that for all of us as believers, that we will be shedding more and more of these fig leaves and more of these yokes so that we can live like naked and unashamed. And so I just want to read, like kind of as we come to a close, I want to read Matthew 11 again, because there's a beautiful invitation in here. And so Jesus says, "Come to me, all of you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, because I am lowly and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." Jesus' promise to everyone who comes to him is that he will give them rest. Like that is his promise. He says anyone who comes to him, he will give them rest. And friends, I don't want us to overcomplicate this come, because we can really overcomplicate this thing. And in this season, I have overcomplicated this thing. And the Lord's like, hey, I just come. Like just come. Whether it's coming and sitting with him in silence and solitude, and I don't have much to say, because I feel like I already said it the last time I came, so I ain't got nothing new to say. It's the same thing, or it is the same thing, but we can just come. And so, friends, Shalomies, like here's your call to action, between now and the next time we're together is for you to come to Jesus in silence and solitude, to come to Jesus in receiving his invitation to be your truest self, your weak, sinful self. I had a pastor friend, he used to say, Jesus didn't die for your ideal self, he died for your true self. Like that is the one that he loves. That is the one that he went to the cross for. And then like to come to Jesus in confession and repentance instead of masking and covering. Like trade those things for confessing and repenting your sins, and then come to Jesus trading all the ways in which you seek to overcompensate for your shame, for faith in his sufficient grace. Like that his grace is sufficient for you. And so because of that, you can live naked and unashamed, and then just come to Jesus praying Psalm 130, 39:23-24. Lord, search my heart, test and know my anxious thoughts. See if there's any offensive, shameful way, shame-filled, really, ways within me, and lead me in the way of everlasting, because shame could be showing up in your life in a very subtle way. But I pray that you would invite the Lord to reveal those places in you where you are functioning more out of shame than you are out of his grace. And so, yeah, like take some time over the next couple of weeks and think through those things, and see what the Lord will have to say to you.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Shalomies. If you're interested in learning more about today's topic, please check the show notes for more information. Also, we would love to hear from you. Feel free to message us on Instagram or shoot us an email at podcast@thewoodsonInstitute.org. And don't forget, hit that subscribe button wherever you watch or listen to the podcast. It helps other people find the show and connect with us. Until next time, grace and peace, y'all.